in the Bronx.
You grew up.
I was born in Manhattan.
Born in Manhattan.
But I don't remember anything about it because they didn't live there too long.
They lived where? In the Bronx.
In the Bronx, right.
In the Bronx, right? So they lived in the Bronx when you were all kids.
Then, no, after Manhattan.
Right. Put those lights on. Yeah.
What did your birth certificate say about where you were born?
116th Street.
No,
That's where I,
14th Street.
114th Street.
Behind
That's where I
Thurman.
was born.
No, on the wall.
On the
no,
wall left.
where the receptacle is, that's it.
I was born on 114th Street
Right.
in Manhattan.
Well, I got,
You too?
no, if I got mine, no, I don't have my birth certificate.
Ethel was born in Brooklyn.
Shut those lights on because you have the reflection on their glasses.
No, that's why I shut that.
No, you have the reflection on their glasses. Ethel was born in Brooklyn?
Ethel was born in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I don't know if this has got to be louder.
Where's your remote microphone?
I didn't bring it.
And Ruthie was born in the Bronx.
Ruthie was born in the Bronx. Yeah.
Well, it was...
We lived on Washington, but not at 1766. It was near the Bronx House.
What was
I don't know
17?
the address.
What was 1766? The Grand Concourse?
Washington
No,
Avenue.
Oh, Washington Avenue.
Oh, we were there for years and years. How many
We were
years?
there for many years. We moved out of there
180s.
to 180th Street, and then we moved to the Grand Concourse. No, from the Grand Concourse we moved to 180th.
Yeah, because they put the bank up, they chased us all out.
Oh, there. And from 180th Street we went to Riverside.
Right.
So you went to 180th Street?
From Washington Avenue, from 1766 Washington Avenue. That's the only address I know.
That way around. Yeah.
And then from there we went to 180th Street.
No, on this side, yeah.
From there we moved to Riverdale.
From there to Riverdale. You remember where in Riverdale?
259 West
259th?
259th Street.
Oh, well,
What? Was he born there? Yeah. Who was born there?
I think they were both born.
I think they were all born there.
I know I
They
lived
were all
there.
born there.
What, the Wengels too?
No, they came to visit every weekend.
They didn't live there.
No.
The Siegels.
They lived there when they were first married.
Yeah,
The Siegels lived there
right.
because the Siegels lived there. Then they went to California. Then
Right.
they came back,
They went there to visit.
and then they went, and from there they went to Far Rockaway.
Oh, yeah, they lived in Far Rockaway for a couple of years.
Put the
Not too
camera
long.
closer.
Not too long.
But don't you have your birth certificate? Where were you born?
New York Jewish Hospital.
Yeah, but what's the address?
I don't know.
There's got to be an address at the
It
house.
just said New York Jewish Hospital. I don't have it now, but
You
it
were
just
born
said New
in
York Jewish Hospital.
259
And
West.
where were you born?
The same place.
Yeah.
I don't remember when he was
Running around in the backyard.
there.
What
He
was
was so, don't you remember how he used to cry so much?
their grandparents' names?
So ask.
Oh, what were your grandparents' names?
My grandparents' name.
Yeah, on the
Now,
Lippman side?
On the Lippman side, it was Ethel and Max Lippman.
That was your father's parents.
Right. My mother's parents were Parariba and
I don't think.
Reuben Jordan.
And Reuben Jordan.
And the Lippman side was from where?
They came from Lithuania.
What town?
Kovna.
Kovna?
Kovna.
Kovna?
And what about the Jordan side?
Jordans came from Riga,
Now-
Latvia.
Latvia.
Latvia and Lithuania.
not Lithuania, Latvia.
No, but Lithuania was the
Yeah.
other side.
Uh-huh. And you didn't know your great-grandparents?
No.
Do you,
No?
how old were they when they died? Were they alive when you were kids? Were they here?
My grandfather died during World War I.
In Europe?
The Bolshevik, and also an uncle there, their son, Hunka, who was 16 years of age at the time when the Bolsheviks came into power.
Wasn't he one of the twins?
No,
Who was the...
both twins died.
Oh, both twins died.
Now, was this from your father's side or your mother's side?
My mother's side.
From your mother's side.
Now, Hunka was kidnapped by the Bolsheviks, and no one ever heard from him again. Then, my grandfather became ill, and he passed away, and my grandmother came to America.
Is she the
They
one that
both
passed away
had-
in our house? Which one was the one in our...
Max Lippman passed away.
In our house?
in our
I know
house.
one of them
Don't you
passed.
remember when he was laying in the living room?
Yeah, of course, it was
My
a
aunts and
holiday or
uncles
something.
couldn't afford a funeral home, right?
They couldn't.
We had a sick father. We had a sick father in the house at the time. And they kept my grandfather in the living room there on the floor.
Of course, I think it was Shabbos or a holiday or something.
That doesn't make any difference.
No, you had to have somebody to watch him when he was dead till he was buried. Right? You had to have somebody to watch him until he was
Well,
Well, in those days-
in those days, they didn't have funeral homes where they, they had, but
That was expensive.
That
See-
time they called it expensive. It was a lot cheaper, but it
oh
was...
boy.
How many brothers and sisters did Grandpa on the Lippman side have?
Well, there was Uncle Dave, Uncle Herman,
Uncle Eli.
Uncle Eli,
Uncle Charlie.
Uncle Charlie. Of course, my father was Philip. And
Aunt Lena.
Aunt Lena and
Aunt
Aunt May.
Those were the two girls.
Yeah, those were the two girls.
And on Grandma's side? On the Jordan side?
So there was 7 of them altogether.
7 on the Lippmans.
Seven Lippmans. So Grandpa Philip had 6 brothers and sisters altogether. But
Right.
plus himself.
And they all came to the United States.
They
Yeah.
all were in the United States.
And
And on my maternal side of the family, the grandmother came to the United States, even though there was a passport for my grandfather, but he died before they were able to get on a ship.
uh-huh.
And I had an Uncle Charlie, and I
Uncle
understand
Izzy.
Uncle Izzy,
This is-
Uncle Willie.
This is Nanny's brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Uncle Willie, Uncle Dan,
Right.
Uncle Lou, Uncle Sam.
Right. Then the
Then
girls.
the girls,
Aunt
mother, Aunt Celia, and Marsha.
So there were 8 then.
8 living. There were twins that died in Europe, and there was that uncle who was kidnapped by the Bolsheviks, and no one knows, what happened to him.
Right. So those are the people who lived there.
Wow. Speak loud.
So now everybody came to New York?
No.
No. The only ones that came to New York were the Lippmans.
Right.
Yes, we're in Jersey.
On the Jordan side of the family, they went to New Jersey
Right.
because they had cousins there, I suppose, that they were able to
Come.
use as relatives that they went to, but they actually weren't with them, but they were, I suppose, what would you call them?
Sponsors.
I think they were cousins or...
Cousins. They were first cousins.
So the Jordans came to New Jersey and the Lippmans went to New York.
Right.
Okay. But that's the way that, and they all lived close to each other.
All
In
close.
Jersey, all the houses were together, with the whole family.
And what about the Lippmans?
The
No, they were
Lippmans,
all
they were also in the,
No, they were all separated.
They doing what?
they were really separated. Because my Uncle
Staten Island
Jay
and
established
Brooklyn.
himself as a
you
living
Happy
country.
New Year.
All right, you too.
Okay.
Yeah. Ronnie?
Hi. Happy New Year.
So, hello Moisha, come and sit down. So now, who got married first?
Taking movies.
Of your brothers and sisters? Who got married first?
My brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Ethel was married first,
Ethel was married first,
then Charlie,
right?
then Lucy, then I.
And, okay. And you met, when you remember when you all went to school?
Oh yeah, we went to PS4, the
PS4
Bronx,
in the Bronx.
on
On
Fulton
Third
Avenue.
What avenue?
Well, on Fulton Avenue, I mean, the school extended over into Third Avenue, but the entrance to the school was on Fulton Avenue
Yeah.
and 173rd Street.
And 173rd Street. So you did that up to what grade?
Oh, all the way up to the
Eighth
8th grade.
Yeah, they didn't have six.
They didn't have junior highs then.
And then where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at the Theodore Roosevelt High, I went to.
Right.
Ethel did not go to high school.
No?
Charlie went to a trade
Trade
school
school.
in Manhattan.
Right.
Yeah.
The Barons of Hirsch.
Barons of Hirsch.
Barrington Hirsch.
Right.
Ruthie went to the Walton High School.
Walton. Is that where
Walton.
near where Phyllis used to live? On Walton Avenue?
No,
Oh,
it was in the Kingsbridge area.
okay. And when,
What year did the family come over to the United States?
Well, it must have been, I know my mother came over, I think, in 1911.
So we'd all be in that range there.
And-
Well, she didn't come. Didn't she come with Marsha and
No, she came, she was
Grace?
supposed to come with Uncle Lou, but Uncle Lou became ill before he left. So Uncle Sam came in his place, and he
Okay.
didn't, and he used his brother's name.
He was the baby of the brothers, the whole
Right.
family.
Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam. So,
You remember him?
I don't remember him.
You remember him?
Uncle Sam?
Wear
Yeah.
shorts.
Short,
He
short
had a grocery and butcher store in Jersey.
And what year did the Lippman family come over? Grandpa?
That
Uh,
I would not know.
But everybody was born in the United States. You and my father and Ethel.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, we were all born in the United States. On the Lippman side of the family, there was, I think, Aunt Lena, Uncle Charlie, and Uncle Eli were born in the United States. That I know. Aunt May wasn't born in the United States.
I don't think so.
Your father wasn't born in the United States?
No.
He came here when he was 9 years of age.
And Nanny wasn't born in the United States?
No.
Right. So she came like 1911? And they both came. Where did they get married?
They got married in Manhattan. In Manhattan because
Where did they
my
meet?
father met, they met
Through friends or relatives. Yeah.
through friends or relatives.
In Manhattan.
And my father had a stationery store at that time on 80, around 80th Street somewhere, Yorkville,
Right,
Manhattan.
right.
And
Were they Orthodox Jewish then, Ryna?
Not really.
they were
In those days, that's all it was Orthodox.
Orthodox,
schools.
you know, it was
Right.
only Orthodox at that time.
Right.
But they weren't real, they didn't wear, the women didn't wear shakels, and they
Right.
didn't, you know, I mean, they were,
Did everybody go to Hebrew school?
I know my mother didn't.
No, but I mean, you went to Hebrew school?
I went to Hebrew school.
Ruthie, Ryna?
No, I and your father went to Hebrew school only. They didn't want to go to Hebrew school, Ethel and Ruthie.
Ethel and Ruthie didn't want to go to Hebrew school. So when,
It was right on the next block.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
But that shit-
where they got the Cross Bronx Expressway. That's where the shul was. They tore it down, but they had made the expressway.
no,
And that was one of the nicest streets in the Bronx.
really,
Even my aunts, like Aunt Celia and Aunt Masha, their streets weren't as nice as ours, but it was tree lined, and we lived, well, they didn't call it then the living room. The front room was right, you know, in the front of the building. And we lived on the first floor in a, with a fire escape, you know, there.
right, right.
And that was it. It was a 4-room apartment. I can picture it even now.
Yeah. What do you remember about your father?
Very, very little, because he was very sick. All I can remember is that every night he would come home with candy from Lofts. They had these tin boxes that they didn't have paper boxes for candy in those days. They had tins. And he would bring home candy for all of us.
Right.
What year did he pass away?
1926.
So in 1926, you were what, 11?
11 and 12.
11 and 12.
I have 13.
Yeah, wasn't that a year before my bar mitzvah?
Oh yeah, it was before his bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
He was
And
before.
I used to go with him to Hebrew school to make sure that he would.
That he would go, right?
That's how I went. I went longer to Hebrew school than he did.
Yeah.
I
'Cause
almost went to, you know, I started high school, but it was, I had to go and get a job because we needed extra money in the house. And I had to get a job. And with my school books, I would travel on the elevated lines to a cosmetic concern, because that cosmetic concern was owned by the father of one of my teachers in school. And she loved my handwriting, and I would write all the
Labels?
compound
Oh.
instructions on sheets of paper. I didn't know how to use a typewriter, you know I did. And that's what they used to prepare the cosmetics that they sold.
That's fine.
And you know where it was? On 129th Street, off 2nd Avenue. I had to change from the 3rd Avenue L to the 2nd Avenue L to go there. Here with my books.
That was Harlem then, huh?
But
It wasn't
at that
wasn't-
time,
wasn't
at that
that
time it
neighborhood,
was, no, there were no blacks there at that time. When I started to work full time, I really worked in Harlem
Where
on
did you work?
125th Street
To do what?
with an insurance broker. I was a secretary,
What type of work did Nanny do?
dressmaking. She used to make the dresses for the teachers in the school.
Don't. We're talking. Yes.
The teachers in the school.
So she used to make dresses for teachers.
And see, my aunts used to work for a dressmaker outside. They worked for someone on Claremont Parkway, which was several, blocks away. And And that's what they were taught to do, sew, you know. So my mother did the sewing in the house. 4 small children she had to take care of.
Right.
So she couldn't go outside to work, she had to work in the house. I can hear that sewing machine going to this very day at night, all night long. And then after we got out of school, we started to go to high school. So my Uncle Eli had a friend who was in the dress business. Matthew?
Something like that.
He used to sell party dresses for women. And he used to bring home the cut-out dresses. My mother used to sew them for
The
him.
patterns or the pieces.
Yeah, pieces.
The pieces. So, okay. You remember your first job, Daddy?
Well, that was for electrician. I think I remember that day. Back $4 or $5 a day.
I'm talking about when you were younger, your first job.
Yeah, well, that was the first job.
Right out of school, I think they give you a job, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And
Trade
then
school.
my uncle Dave Lippman,
Yeah, he was a general
he
contractor.
was a general contractor in Staten Island.
You go to the library, they got these here history books of Staten Island. He's in that book. He was a big shot in Staten Island.
It was only because he was
He had contracts for all kind of.
contracts for all kinds of buildings. And
He never gave you a job then.
then
I worked on one house. That was towards the end when he was very sick. I wired up the whole apartment house, but we lost money. I paid for all the material and everything, and he was very sick. He couldn't do it, and the bank took the building back. He lost the building. They took the building back, and I was completed with the job, and I couldn't get any money. I didn't know how to get money at that time.
yeah.
No, I had a licensed electrician from Staten Island. He covered the job for me. Because I worked for him before a little bit, and then after the job I worked for him again. The contractor in Staten Island, you remember? I had to stay over at Uncle Dave's house.
Yeah.
I slept there for a couple of months.
And they were hard times, but we survived.
Did Ruthie work?
Yes.
Yeah.
What did Ruthie
My Uncle Eli gave her a job,
In the office.
recommended her for a job, where he worked Wellesley Molds in the office.
Usually you see fishes on it or,
And she did, general clerical work.
And Ethel?
not too loud.
Ethel was a milliner,
She
used to make hats
little design on them.
for a milliner who was on the concourse.
Tell Phyllis to shut up.
Who's of all 4 of you? Who's the age in order? Like you're the oldest, and
I'm the oldest, then comes your father, then Ethel, and then Lucy.
And Ethel and
Murray,
then
thank you. We'll put this out for dessert.
yeah.
I'm
And
gonna put that in the fridge right now.
so, do you remember any stories about when you were growing up? Like what were the holidays like for you?
Well, we kept all the holidays here.
All the holidays.
Those days.
Everyone,
So we'll have dinner.
well, I can remember the last few holidays where I went, when my father was still living, and of course he was blind.
I didn't
You
know.
didn't know, you didn't know that either? You
No.
never told him?
You
Never
He
came up.
became blind,
from what?
How come he took you, Scott?
well,
Any idea?
the diagnosis at the time of his death was a tumor on the optic nerve.
A tumor on the optic nerve. Today that could be probably operated on.
Yeah.
He was hospitalized in the Montefiore Hospital
Right.
for a long, long time.
That was in
And he
Brooklyn or
passed
Bronx?
In the Bronx, on 238th something, west. And that is where he passed away.
So what happened?
But you ask about the holidays. When my father was ill, my uncle Dave used to invite everyone in the family, like for the whole
we had
Easter holiday.
The whole Lippman cycle with all his brothers and sisters, and all the nieces and nephews. He had a house, he had a big house, like this here with a living room and dining room, the living room, and sitting room, whatever it is. And
And my mother used to do all the cooking for all these people.
Yeah?
oh, we slept over, 99% of the people.
Over there.
Once it's
And
the
my
reflection of the lights on the faces.
uncle had to go into the city from Staten Island into, on the Lower
To
East
Lancey
Side.
Street, that's where they
And
did all
that's
the
where he
shopping.
did all the shopping. He had to take one of his trucks in order to do the shopping because he would buy eggs by the crate,
Well, for Passover, he bought everything in
Passover.
Atlantic.
matzah, hundreds of pounds because he would give all the goyim that worked for him a box of matzah.
But how did the women manage with, we were doing the cooking and going to services and the scraping of the carrots and the cleaning and...
What do you mean? And the
How
kosher
did-
of the chickens.
Did you have to buy
The-
chickens and pluck the feathers?
Right, right,
My mother used to pluck the feathers and over the
the stove, burn the feathers off.
burners, you know, burners of the
That's some
stove
job.
used to burn the,
Because I know I opened up an Empire frozen turkey today, and there were 4 feathers on it. I'm saying, oh my God, there's 4 feathers on this turkey. I gotta pluck. But then I remembered my mother plucking the
It's the
whole
same
thing.
thing, sure.
plucking those feathers.
They were delicious. the little
You know,
little-
they didn't have butchers to do that for you in those days.
Right.
In fact, you used to buy them. They used to slaughter them, you used to take it home. It was still warm.
Oh,
So you buy them right from the guy that killed him, what's his name?
And when it came to the fish, we had fish swimming around our bathtub.
really?
Yeah, we made that, they made
The carp
little
and the pike and the,
Right in the bathtub, huh? Until you were
And
ready
then-
to eat them.
no, and
No, they had to chop it up and make the chop
they had to be
clean.
cleaned, the scales taken off, you had to have
And you
special
did
things.
this?
I used to help my mother here, but my mother, you know,
Sure.
she knew how do you like that? huh?
My brother once got lost by the fish market
Yeah.
because the fish used to be in tanks like swimming pools.
Right.
And he was on the other side of the fish tank and she was on the other.
Right.
And she didn't see him, but she was there getting fresh fish.
That's what
Yeah,
they
But
did in those
swimming in
days.
pools.
Right, everybody
Right.
made their own fish, you don't
Right.
get bottled, canned fish anymore, jarred fish.
So, you want to shut it off?
Yeah,
I guess.
continue some other time.
We could
Oh,
start.
this is great.
The family history.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah, it's nice to
I
listen
thought
to
I
all
was
these
listening
old
to a Barbara
stories.
Walters special.
I
You in the living room.
know. Used to sleep on chairs? Okay.
Oh, that's not.
Phyllis,
Quiet.
we're taping in
How we
here.
used to get
Quiet.
Mom's cousins from Philadelphia or from New Jersey, like Lillian and
Yeah, speak up.
Sammy Jordan. They used to come from New Jersey.
Why don't you-
In those
why don't you
days,
guys
it was a
go
big
down-
Wait,
trip.
wait.
I think
Ronnie,
he's got
is it on?
It's on, yeah, he's got it on.
You know the
Yeah. It's on. The light's on there.
Is it on? The taping?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, talk, good.
Aunt Bessie used to come with Sammy and Lillian. And of course, Mom wouldn't let them go home to New Jersey.
They came from Philadelphia?
Oh, this is my mother's sister-in-law, this one, and her children. They used to come to visit us. And of course, we didn't have any beds, you know, we had one extra folding bed, but that the aunt slept on, and the children used to sleep. We used to make beds out of the dining room chairs, you know, pillows, blankets, and all those things.
Like a
And this is the
barricade.
way they used to have fun.
And they all came back.
And they all came back.
Time.
Even the cousins from Philadelphia who used to come, Rosie and her would come back again and again and again.
No,
But
still going. Everybody else
that's
is in
how
the
it was in those days with relatives. I mean, no one stood on ceremonies. Everyone was happy to see each other.
And the family
And the
stayed
family-
together for the holidays.
Come to the service is only on Friday.
Unbelievable. Today, you have to be so careful. I mean, other people, I don't mean our
Right.
What's his name? David?
because they don't know, you know, they never had the experience before, so they don't.
But if we don't make the experience, they don't have it for
Right.
them to remember.
Right, kids remember.
Ready? It was Saturday night and
What are we finding out?
at
How he met Ruthie.
and I asked Lenny, a cousin of mine, who I brought up with, to go to this dance in New York. And we went up there with the subway, you know. In those days you could ride the subways. And it was called the Mayfair. It was a dance place where you can go down and meet girls and everything. And it was a nice place. It was on 47th Street and Broadway. When I went down there, the place wasn't crowded yet. And fellas and girls were dancing, and then suddenly I saw three girls. There was Margie, Harriet, and Ruthie. So I went over and asked Ruthie for a dance, and she said to me, all right, and we started dancing. And then after the band stopped playing, we sat down and started talking. So she asked me where I'm from. I said, from Brooklyn. And she was from the Bronx. So I said, okay. So the girls told her, what are you bothering with the fellow from Brooklyn? He's not interested in you. He's not going to take you home or anything like that. So anyway, after the evening I went home, she went home. I was sitting on a porch at the house, you know, I was living on 56th Street, and I said to myself, should I call her or you know, I wasn't sure.
How old were you, Murray?
Let's see, 1942 I met her. About 27, who remembers anyway. Is it working yet? And I said, I'm going to call her. So I called the house, and I think her mother answered, and she told me she wasn't in. So I said, I'll leave a message. So the last thing I heard that the mother told Ruthie that a boy from Brooklyn called. And so I got her on the phone the next day, and I asked her for a date, and she accepted. And I had a friend named Al Hyman, who was a very close friend. I was the best man at his wedding, and he and his wife went out with me to go out with Ruthie, and I met her downtown somewhere in New York. I think it was the Astor Hotel. And we went to Zimmerman's. That was our first date.
What was Zimmerman's?
Zimmerman was a restaurant. I think it was a Hungarian restaurant. And we went down there, we had dinner, and we spoke for a while. We had a nice evening together, and Al and I and Parwan, we took him home. And from then on, I kept seeing her.
How old was Ruthie then, Murray?
I think she was 18, 19.
So you were...
Oh yeah, she was talking about the war. She said, I hope my brother Charlie don't go into the war, she said to me. So I didn't know Charlie then. Anyway, I said, so what are you worried about? He's married, isn't he? She said, yeah. You were married, weren't you, Charlie? So,
You were married first, Dad?
yeah, he was married. And after that, I started seeing her, and they had meetings there. I think it was the Jordan meetings. At,
Lippman's, no.
No, Jordan.
Jordan was
Yeah,
place?
because it was Irving Siegel's house
that I went to the first Jordan meeting. He lived in a 3-room apartment. And it was so crowded that some people had to sit out on the fire escape because it was a very hot day. And then that was the first meeting I went to the Jordans. Then after that, I kept seeing her. And Al and I used to go out together with his wife. And we went to the movies. I don't remember what picture it was, but we went out to eat. And what happened was, this was, I think I met her in, right after Pearl Harbor, about 3 or 4 weeks after that. And what happened was that I kept seeing her until I went into the Army. Because it was about in May, from February to May I was seeing her, and then I went into the Army in May. And I kept corresponding with her, sending letters, and she sent me letters, and I went to Camp Croft, South Carolina. And it was a very lonely weekends being without her, so I had to go to the USO and with the fellas, they had entertainment there and dances. And after I had my basic training, they sent me up to Camp Edwards, Massachusetts. I went into my combat outfit. And when I was up there, Ruthie had a friend that lived in Providence. And we corresponded that I should come down if I get a pass to see her in Providence. So I asked my sergeant if he would give me a pass, and he gave it to me. As long as I behaved all right, I did my details, I got a pass and I went to see her in Providence. That was, I think, 1 weekend there. I think I slept at a Y. And anyway, after that weekend, I went back, and then I kept corresponding, and I had a furlough. I came in for a furlough, went out and with my friend again, Al, and we all went out together. And weekends, we always went out to movies and shows. And then the time came, I had to leave, She saw me off at the last stop at the subway before I left for the Army. And that's it. I went down to South Carolina, and I kept in correspondence. And after that, they shipped me overseas. And from that time on, they were sending me letters. Now, sending letters, she was sending me packages, And she also sent a song. It was called, what was that song? I think, I can't think of the name. It was a very popular song. And she wrote the words out. And it was very popular then. And I kept singing, and I had a misfortune that, I got sick. I had malaria. And I was in a hospital. And the message came back home that I was missing in action. Because the package came back. And nobody knew about it. And I didn't know about it. I was in the hospital for 12 days. And then I kept corresponding. After I got out of the hospital, they were all relieved, and I started sending letters back home, and till the end of the war. And when I got home, it was October 5th. I got out of the Army in 1945. And kept singing, and I made plans to get married because it was almost 4 years I was away.
You went in 42?
Almost 4 years you were
Yeah, in
away?
45. What?
Almost 4 years you were
A
away?
little over, about 3.5. And then I made plans. I lost all my friends. I didn't know where they were, being away for long, I didn't know where they were. So I couldn't invite them. And I went to make plans. Uncle Eli, rest in peace, he's Uncle Eli Lippman. He arranged all the details for getting married in their hotel on 47th Street, I think. So then and we went, we made the plans, and she invited a lot of people from her place. It was about almost 200 people. A lot of them came. We were only supposed to have a certain amount, and a lot of them came. And the maitre d' got mad because she had more people than we expected. And that's it. And then, after the ceremonies and after, I had a relative who had a car, took us to the mountains. He was a very close, he wasn't my relative, but he was a relative of somebody on my side, on the other side, and he took us up to the mountains. It was called the Netherly. And I was up there for honeymoon, and we all had a good time there. We took sleigh rides there, and we spent a week up there, and I had to go back because I had to go back to work in the liquor business. And that's how the whole thing happened, you know, finished with the introduction and all that.
Ryna, when Ruthie was keeping company with Murray, did you know she was going to marry him?
Oh, sure.
Do I know something?
Yeah, from the beginning?
You see, I didn't go into all the
She
details.
waited for him 4 years?
You know how I married,
For him to come back?
I'll tell you how destiny
time?
works. I was supposed to go out with a friend named Jerry, who was he was a linotype apprentice. And I was supposed to go out with him because his father had a candy store next to the place where I worked. And he calls me up and he says to me, "Murray, I can't go out with you tonight." So I said, "What am I going to do? I don't want to go up to New York alone." So I asked my cousin Lenny, who I brought up, he happened to be around. And that's how I went up there, because if he went out with me, you know, to go to his dance, I wouldn't go to New York because he was working in New York. And what happened is, when he canceled out, I went with Lenny up to New York and went to the Mayfair. And that's by accident I met Ruthie, because that was destiny.
How old were you then, Murray, when you met Ruthie?
But I'm 27.
You were 27 when you met her?
Yeah.
So you were 31 when you got married? So you were 7 years older than Ruthie.
I don't know how old she was. I never asked her.
You never know
I
how-
think she was 18 or 19. And what happened is, I lived in Riverdale for...
You were
I-
9 years older than her.
Yeah, I went to Riverdale. I lived. You know why? I couldn't get a place to live. So I had a room there, and lived, I think, for 2 years up there, and then I put in for an apartment in Hempstead. And it happened that it was very hard to get, because the old landlord wanted a lot of money. And so my uncle I worked with got a hold of the superintendent, says, "Look, I want to get an apartment for him." So it took me 2 years to get an apartment in Hempstead. So I gave the guy $200 under the table. He was afraid to take it. So I threw it down on the floor there, and he took it. And that's how I got the apartment. It was very hard. I looked around in Woodside, I looked around all over. Very hard to get. When I got the apartment in Hempstead, it was a very cheap apartment. It was $69 a month. The 3 rooms with a garage and utilities. And then I lived there for about 11 years, and I moved to Seaford. And Ruthie was crying when she was going in the subway, moving out of the Riverdale place. She felt like, I don't know, nostalgic, you know, lonesome like. And I figured, well, she'll get over it. And that's it. And Eric, Phil was born in
48.
where was it? In Manhattan, and up in New York. Dr. Schifrin was the doctor. He was born up there. And then I took him home a week after, and we had a Pinya Ben. It was the 8th day of the bris. And Eric, he was
David was born in
Hampstead. He went to Hampstead and many old,
all three were born in Hampstead?
two of them were born upstate, up in Manhattan there.
Daddy, you talk about how you met Mommy.
Oh. That was in a convalescent home. I was working there and she came up to visit.
Look around.
And that's how we met.
What kind of job did you have there? What were you doing?
A waiter. I
Did
became
you-
the head waiter
You
before I,
Oh, was it Nyack?
yeah, it's close to Nyack.
It's close to
I
Nyack.
forget what town it was now. The building ain't even there no more. But, I worked there, I don't know how many years, 3 years, 2 years. And then I worked in the Navy Yard.
Did you work in the Navy Yard? Did they have asbestos there?
Oh, sure.
You know, my friend Willie's brother-in-law worked in the Navy Yard and he worked on asbestos.
In this passing him now?
Well, his lungs got clogged.
Oh, yeah.
They had to operate on and clean out his lung. What a job.
Well, he must have had that job.
He's an electrician like you.
Oh, yeah, and
He
he was...
worked on the
How
ships.
did he date her?
Yeah, well, that's where all the asbestos is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you work there also with the asbestos?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Murray,
What?
if you had to remember one thing about Ruthie, the night that you met her, what would you say you remembered most?
Remembered most?
Right. What impressed you most the night you met her?
Well, I'll tell you, Ruthie to me was the finest, the most pleasant person I ever met. She was honest. She was beautiful. She had a very good personality, kind. And that's what impressed me, the way she spoke. And before I met her, I went out with different girls, which I didn't care for. And,
But you knew she was something special.
Oh, yeah. She was the best. I couldn't find anybody, nobody was better than her. To me, she was the best.
And she was willing to let you travel from the Bronx
I'll
into
tell you.
Brooklyn?
I tell you, I took her to Grand Concourse. She lived next to the Dollar Savings Bank. And I left her about 2 o'clock at Saturday night. And I go down the subway by myself to go back to Brooklyn. I wasn't scared one bit. 2, 3 o'clock by myself.
Right.
I get back to Brooklyn. I'm alone in the street, waiting for a trolley car.
A trolley car?
There was trolleys in there in
Right.
Brooklyn. It
Yeah.
was Church Avenue.
Yeah.
And it didn't bother me one bit, you know, because she cooperated with me. You know, I had to go out to a show on Broadway. She would meet me halfway. And she'd meet me somewhere on 42nd Street or somewhere around there, and we'd go out. It never dawned on me that it was going to be tough for her to travel alone and so forth. The subways in that time were safe.
Right.
It wasn't bad.
Charlie, where were you living when you met Thelma?
Well, I was living up there when...
Or at the place?
Yeah. I was there a couple of years.
And where was she living?
In the Bronx, Kelly Street.
Did you have a car then?
No, no. Well, no, I didn't have a car then. No. No. Got back and forth with her. I don't even remember the traveling, but I used to like her up at the house.
So were you dating her a long time before you decided to get married?
Yeah, it must have been, we met maybe, I think 2 years, 3 years or something, no, back one day.
Daddy, why'd you leave the convalescent home?
I was fired.
That's a good reason.
I used to make telephone calls from the office. I didn't put any money in the phone booth.
Who would you used to call?
Well, they're not used to call.
Did you make many tips there? When you worked as a waiter?
Okay, sure, they all kept me.
So why were you fired? Because you made a phone call?
Yeah,
So they fired you for making a phone call then?
right.
No, I never knew what you got. You get married in 41? 41
41 or 42.
41?
Just when the war started.
Had to be the,
War started in 41.
41, beginning of 42, because Phyllis was born in the end of 42.
War started in 41.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they didn't get
See,
married till
when I
they
came in on a furlough, I worked with
Now,
Phyllis
Phyllis said that
Phyllis,
they were
no,
married.
that was
they
yeah.
were
for
married
the carriage. She had to go up
a
to
year
an office
before
for
the
something.
Phyllis was born.
And I was walking with her on the Yankee.
So that'd be the end
And
of
the man came over to
41.
me and said to me, do they take men in the army that's married? Because I was watching Phyllis in the carriage,
Yeah.
you know? Not his Phyllis,
Phyllis
that's
May.
Phyllis, the other.
You had your uniform on then?
Yeah, I came for furlough. So,
You should have said I'm not married, it's just my kid.
Oh, they didn't do
Oh,
those
today?
things then, right? Today, maybe.
Today it wouldn't be so terrible.
and Ethel got married before me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Ethel got married
Oh,
before you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Ethel got married.
And Ethel lived on Morris Avenue,
Yeah.
in 3-room apartment.
And,
How old was Ethel when she got married?
Early 20s.
How old were you, Charlie?
I remember, what, like 24, 25?
Charlie was younger than me by 2 years.
You're older than my father?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
The only thing is, I wasn't at his bar mitzvah.
You weren't at my father's bar mitzvah. He doesn't even remember it himself. Ryna, you remember my father's bar mitzvah?
Sure.
You do? Tell me about it.
Yeah, when they threw
Yeah.
all the raisins and nuts, the little bags of raisins and nuts.
Right.
Tell me, did
The
they get a-
women was up on the top of it, they threw it down.
did they
You
give
know,
you, did they give you a
That
fountain?
temple was
Yeah.
divided with men and women, you know.
It was an Orthodox temple?
Yeah.
But we didn't consider it Orthodox, we just called it, you know, our
It was
temple.
normal.
It was the
We
way
didn't
it
know
went,
about
that's right.
Different types of shuls, a shul was a shul.
It
There
was
always
a beautiful temple, though,
Oh,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
So what do you remember about his bar mitzvah? Because he doesn't remember anything.
Well, the bar mitzvah, you know, the ceremony, of course, was held in the temple,
Right.
and it was only, you know, 1 block away.
What was that, Washington
And
Avenue?
then,
Yeah.
and then in our dining room, we had the reception, you know, so what was the reception? You know, the herring and the fish and all the sweets and everything else. And it wasn't during the week.
It was during the
It's
week.
during the
It
week?
was on a Thursday.
Now, was that usual then?
Well, I think it was because my father wasn't living or something to that effect, you know?
Right.
Something to that effect.
Well, it might have been a holiday. I think it was somewhere around Passover, before or after
That's
Passover.
possible.
About Passover,
Yeah.
yeah, right there.
So,
Now
so
is
did you have a lot of people?
Not too many people.
No.
There weren't too many people. Just the
Immediate
immediate relatives, you know.
aunts and uncles.
Aunts and uncles.
Were
None
you
of them-
nervous, Charlie?
What did you have to get nervous? It's only when you got married you got
Who was the
nervous.
band did?
The band.
No band, well, you couldn't band.
Did you have a DJ?
I got married and it was
And
in the
no
night.
party
Yeah,
planners?
Even the shul, wasn't it the shul that gave you a gift, the suit?
I think so. Well, yeah, the shuls those days, they used to take care of the boys with our fathers.
Got the
Yeah.
suit, right,
They gave you a suit?
a suit.
No kidding. No kidding.
You must have been
Don't say
very
it's a
hard
shul
for your
time,
mother.
Yeah?
Well, the money, today it don't mean nothing what the money was.
Although, you know, we lived in a building where there were people who had their own businesses. You know what I mean?
So
It
how
wasn't
did she
anyone-
support you? How did she
They're
work?
from working.
What
Oh,
did
you
she
weren't
work?
here when you spoke about
No.
what she was.
How did,
Well, she was a dressmaker, but she worked in the house.
but how'd you get the house?
It
No
wasn't
house.
in the house, it
It's
was
an
an
apartment house.
apartment.
No, in Riverdale. How'd you obtain that house?
Well, my Uncle Eli's friend wanted to sell the house.
He's
It
in
was
the
very
real estate
di-
business.
and
Yeah, he
Fred's
owned it.
house didn't
He owned a lot of buildings. He used to, he used to deal, he'd take over buildings and, don't you
Well,
remember?
it was a very bad time, you know, it was during, just the wartime, you
Yeah.
know? So people weren't buying houses. They wanted to, you know, get rid of this house.
But don't you remember, he wanted to sell me an apartment house, an elevated apartment house.
Should
He
have bought
wanted
it.
me to take it over with just
In-
payments, that's
In
all.
Yonkers, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
So why didn't you do it, Dad? We could have been rich.
You could have been a landlord.
But
And,
the house was so old that, one of these elevators, like they have in the business district
And
with gates all around it.
we're all
open all
going into
around.
the service, you know, and where would the,
Was that
you know,
before
my
you met
sister's
Bill?
going to live,
Before you met Bill?
you know, like that.
Yeah.
So we bought this house. And,
Who bought the house?
well, we had a little insurance money, and I was working at the time and everything else. And
That's when I started working for the
For the government.
Navy Department for the,
yeah, and I worked for the Army.
And you were-
At Governor's Island.
Yeah, but
You
I was
worked
at-
for the Navy
yeah,
Yard.
yeah.
And so we all gave the money, and
Wasn't really much at that time.
what was it? What was that house? I think it was
$7,000.
$7,000.
That was a big house, too.
But a whole big
10
corner there,
rooms.
10 rooms.
in a big lot,
Whole corner.
100 by
and
75.
big lawn.
Three families lived in there.
Well, you got pictures of the lawn and everything, I got pictures.
I got
of
pictures of
You
you,
don't have
you and
inside
Ronnie,
of the house.
you and
There were
Ronnie
10
dancing.
running around in the,
And
two
Philip,
kitchens.
I think Philip bumped heads with you.
Two kitchens.
Two
because-
kitchens in that house?
And you started to
because the
cry.
people there
Somebody
were
started
very,
to cry.
You know, they were
Religious,
religious, they
yeah.
have a dairy and a meat kitchen, but we made, out of one kitchen, we made an extra bathroom, remember?
yeah.
You put in a bathroom, shower.
In those days. So who lived in the house now? You had you and Nanny,
I and Nanny,
and,
your mother and father,
right,
Ethel and Lee, and Irving.
Ethel and Irving.
and Ethel and Irving. That's a lot of people in one house. All the kids were born then, except Ricky.
Ricky was born in,
In Washington Heights.
Ricky
Dr.
was
Schifrin was the doctor
for Ricky too?
for Phyllis.
Ricky,
No, for Ricky.
Phyllis and
I think Ricky, let me see now.
Was he born in California?
I think he was born in California. Myra and
Phyllis.
Phyllis were born, Phyllis was born in, when we lived in Riverdale. Well, she was born, you know, before they lived down the concourse across the street from, right next to Alexander's. They lived there. And then they moved with us because he went into the service. And Myra was born also in Riverdale. Only Ricky was born in California.
So you remember any stories about when all four of you were kids?
I said when I began to tell you about how we used to go to my Uncle Dave's house for the Jewish holidays. My mother did all the cooking, and he would go shopping on the east side with his truck to buy all the food for everybody. And
He
My
had
father-
all his brothers used to come
yeah,
with their family.
right, all the
Yeah, we had-
brothers and sisters, you know, they all came with their families there. But they didn't all sleep over. We were the only ones that slept over.
I think some of the others slept over and so on. Used to put 2, 3 beds in a room.
Right. And we had to go there.